Shocking encounter. Racist officer stops a black man in Texas unveiling he's an amazing deputy. The sun hung high in the Texas sky, beating down on the asphalt like an angry judge. A simple drive home from his garage turned into a nightmare for Marcus Collins, beloved mechanic and family man. As he made his way through the small town, the flashing lights of Officer Jim Weston's patrol car snapped him to attention. Marcus felt a familiar clench in his gut. He knew Weston's reputation well. As the officer approached, the disdain radiated from him. "What are you doing on this side of town?" Weston sneered, the question more of a jab than an inquiry. Marcus's pulse quickened, anger rising like bile in his throat, yet fear of confrontation pressed down on him. Deep inside he was torn. Here he was, a dedicated deputy himself. Yet the badge he wore wasn't enough to shield him from the prejudice that stained the air. His mind raced back to his children. How could he explain this? How could he even begin to wrap the complex emotions twisted into knots throughout his life? Speaking out could put his job at risk. The important work he did day in and day out, helping those in need, could come crashing down. "I'm just going home, officer. No need for trouble," he managed, the weariness in his voice betraying him. Weston leaned in, hip cocked and eyes narrowed. "You think you're above the law, huh? Just because you wear a badge?" The accusation stung more than Marcus expected. He wanted to scream. He wanted to fight back, all the while knowing it would only make things worse. Dread pooled in his stomach. What if this moment spiraled into something unforgiving? Despite the indignation swelling within him, he hesitated, weighing his options. Defend himself or protect his family. Before he could second-guess himself again, he pulled out his own badge, revealing his status as a deputy. The surprise that flashed across Weston's face should have been satisfying, but instead, it twisted the knife deeper. Instead of respect, he found only hostility. Their exchange deteriorated into a verbal brawl where the real battle was less about facts and more about power dynamics. The weight of the world felt heavier as Marcus faced not just Weston, but the very demons that taunted him throughout his life. Systemic injustice seeped into his thoughts. Was he barely keeping his head above water, or was it all slipping away? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With the rising tension, all Marcus could think of were the wants of his own kids, an innocuous life, free from the burdens he bore. But as whispers spread through the department, the stakes escalated. His colleagues started to murmur, skepticism flaring against the backdrop of his integrity. Questions morphed into doubts, casting shadows over his dedication. The core of who he was, a protector, a helper, seemed to stumble, teetering on the brink. Riding home, shame mixed with resolve as he stared at the road ahead. He could hear his mother's stories of their heritage, of ancestors who fought for justice and dignity. His heart raced as he considered what action to take. The haunting fear of backlash loomed large. Could he stand up against Weston and expose the deep-seated bias? Or should he retreat, caging his voice to ensure safety for his family? As he pulled into his driveway, the sight of his little ones playing on the lawn should have brought comfort, yet it only magnified his internal struggle. They were his reason for everything, yet the decision bearing down on him could change their lives forever. Just before stepping inside, he paused, breath caught in his throat. What was the right choice? What would it cost? The uncertainty hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and looming, leaving Marcus staring into an abyss of potential and peril. Marcus stood motionless in the doorway, the laughter of his children resonating in his ears, filling the air with a warmth that now felt foreign. The carefree giggles radiated innocence, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside him. Each ringing laugh was a reminder of everything he wished to protect, yet he grappled with the jagged edge of what it meant to be both a father and an officer of the law, in a world that often seemed cruel and unjust. Shaking off the weight of his confrontation, he stepped into the house, absorbing the familiar comfort of home, the smell of his wife's cooking wafting through the air, the soft hum of his children's chatter. But as he settled onto the couch, the fallout from the encounter threatened to encroach upon their sanctuary. The flickering light of the television barely caught his attention. His mind was elsewhere, caught in a relentless loop of Weston's accusations. Could he truly navigate the choppy waters of law enforcement while maintaining his integrity? His children bounded into the room, bouncing on the couch, blissfully unaware of the storm swirling within their father. "Daddy, watch us!" they cried, as they performed their latest acrobatics. For a fleeting moment, Marcus joined their laughter, a facade of normalcy masking the turmoil behind his eyes. Yet, their joy only deepened his resolve. They deserved protection, not just from outside threats but from a system that too often failed those it was meant to serve. That resolve strengthened the longer he sat there, his heart pounding with a newfound purpose. In that moment, he created a mental image of every child, every parent struggling against oppressive forces. It awakened something dormant inside him, a quiet rebellion against the notion that simply enduring was enough. "I never wanted my kids to think fear was normal," he muttered to himself. It was a revelation that hit him hard. He understood that silence equated to complicity, and if he wished to raise children who believed in justice, he had to confront injustice head-on. As he considered the implications of his next steps, determination surged through him. The following morning felt different. It pulsed with an urgency he hadn't recognized before. Marcus dressed with a sense of purpose, his uniform pressing against his chest like an unyielding armor. Before stepping into the department, he took stock of his emotions: anger, fear, determination, each swirling together in a storm that wouldn't be quieted by a simple dismissal of the previous day's incident. Arriving at the precinct, he felt eyes on him. Whispers escalated into a low hum as he passed colleagues who had begun to pigeonhole him in a narrative of division. He'd heard the comments. "Just another token," they whispered. Yet today, their words felt like a challenge. He studied their faces, trying to analyze each one, searching for hidden biases and veiled judgments. "Marcus," the sergeant called, summoning him as if he were an errant child. He approached with measured steps, his pulse quickening. Was it authority or fear he sensed in the sergeant's tone? "We need to talk about yesterday's incident with Weston." As he stood before his superior, adrenaline coursing through him, he made a choice. He wouldn't shrink back. This was his moment to confront not just Weston's actions, but the toxic culture that allowed them to thrive. "Here's what I think," he began, his voice steady but firm. "I can't just stand by as a bystander any longer. We have a responsibility to uphold the law, yes, but we also have a duty to protect every member of this community, regardless of their background." The sergeant's eyebrows furrowed, surprise flickering across his features. Marcus leaned in, finding strength in his resolve. "I refuse to let fear stifle my voice. It's time we face what's happening in this department." There it was, a pivotal step toward authenticity. But as he spoke, an inquiry loomed in Marcus's heart. What repercussions would his choice bring? The stakes heightened. Just then, the sound of the department's door swung open, drawing their attention. Officer Weston entered, his demeanor casual, yet the weighty tension in the air shifted instantly. Marcus felt the familiar knot in his stomach tighten anew. The confrontation of opposing convictions stood before him, ready to force a critical decision. The moment hung, a palpable atmosphere of reckoning, one that would demand an answer. Would he stand tall against Weston's bigotry? Or would the fear of the fallout bind him once more? The time had come to face not just his antagonist, but the very identity he sought to reclaim. Marcus felt the tension thicken in the air as Weston sauntered into the room, the very embodiment of everything he had vowed to confront. The murmur of conversation stopped abruptly, replaced by a thick silence that filled the precinct. Marcus squared his shoulders, determined not to cower in the presence of someone who represented the worst of the ideals he had signed up to uphold. You think you can change things around here, Marcus? Weston smirked, his voice dripping with mockery. This job doesn't require a morality lecture. You know the rules. Keep your head down, follow orders, and do your job. The taunts pinned Marcus in place for a heartbeat as he weighed his response. The suffocating menace of conformity, clamoring for dominance within him. But the memories of laughter at home, the faces of his children, flooded back. He had made a promise to himself that he wouldn't let fear dictate his actions. "Let me tell you something, Weston," Marcus said, trying to keep his tone even as sweat beaded on his brow. "Change isn't going to come from silence. It's time to stop condoning the actions that allow division in our ranks and our community. What happened yesterday? It was wrong." Weston's expression hardened, the smirk fading into a scowl. "You think you're some kind of crusader now? Just because you want to play the hero doesn't mean you won't be thrown in the gutter with the rest of the naive." The sting of those words filed away into the recesses of Marcus's mind, where doubt often resided. The fear crept back in, whispering that his career could be at risk, that pushing back against the tide could lead to isolation. But as he stared back at Weston, Marcus realized he couldn't simply back away. "A crusader?" he echoed, disbelief lacing his tone. "No, I just want to be a decent human being. One who believes justice means more than just following orders. It means standing up for what is right, even when it's hard." The room was charged with anticipation, colleagues shifting ever so slightly in their perches. Marcus stood amidst the silence, not just as a man, but as a representation of the struggle against the culture that had long governed them. He could feel their scrutiny, yet somewhere inside him adrenaline was quickly rising, fueled by the prospect of authenticity. The sergeant cleared his throat, breaking the tension with a forceful remark. "We're all here to do a job, Marcus. Protecting the community doesn't mean stirring the pot. We need unity, not this divisiveness." That term, divisiveness, echoed with a painful resonance. Marcus felt a need for clarity at that moment, a nudge toward fearless expression. Unity doesn't have to mean silence, Sergeant. It shouldn't come at the cost of principles. We can't choose to ignore what's wrong in the system simply because it's easier. We owe it to the people we serve to acknowledge and confront these issues. As Marcus finished, he noticed a glint of recognition in some of the officers' eyes, a hint that perhaps he was not as alone as he had feared. Yet Weston stepped closer, leaving no room for misunderstanding. "You really think you're going to change things? You're going to regret this." Threats laced with intimidation cracked him from within, a reminder that confrontation would come at a cost. There was no turning back now. This was the precipice of a deeper conflict, not simply against Weston, but within himself. Marcus braced himself for whatever fallout this choice would bring, a sense of unease hanging in the air. But alongside it simmered a flicker of hope, a belief that standing firm could spark the change he so desperately sought. Then, just as they stood locked in tension, the distant sound of a police radio crackled to life. The chatter of an incoming situation quickly pulled his attention, distraction hovering over the moment of confrontation. But it also sent a jolt of clarity through him. This was his moment to manifest action. "Duty calls," he said, breaking eye contact with Weston to respond to the dispatcher. In that split second, as he turned and began to exit the precinct, determination surged through him. For the first time, he felt empowered, not by his badge, but by the conviction of his voice. Something inside had shifted. Unbeknownst to Marcus, his actions were about to set into motion a chain of events that would challenge the very foundations of both his personal beliefs and the institution he served. Yet as he stepped out into the world, the weight of the unknown loomed large. Would he be prepared for the consequences that lay ahead? The answers felt just out of reach, thrumming with urgency, waiting to unveil themselves in the days to come. Marcus's heart raced as he exited the precinct, leaving the charged atmosphere behind. The radio crackle guided him to a nearby alley where a situation was unfolding, a report of a suspicious individual fitting the description of a person of color. As he approached the scene, part of him was grateful for the distraction, while the other half braced against a tide of anxiety. This was it, the moment to put his ideals to the test. In the flickering light beneath the street lamp, Marcus spotted his fellow officers. They loomed like a wall of authority, men and women trained to enforce the law, yet he knew they too often upheld an unforgiving system. The figure at the center of their attention was a young black man, his hands raised, eyes wide with fear. The boy, barely more than a teenager, was clearly terrified, surrounded by aggressive posturing that felt all too familiar to Marcus. "What's going on here?" Marcus's voice boomed as he stepped into the fray, his badge gleaming on his chest. The officers paused, momentarily taken aback by his presence. "Just doing our job, Marcus," one officer replied, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his tone. "This kid was seen running away from the store." "Seen?" Marcus challenged, his gaze focused on the boy's frightened face. "By whom? Is there any evidence?" "Just follow the lead, will you?" Weston's voice intruded, laced with authority and arrogance. He leaned in casually, as though the situation was just another routine stop. Better to be safe than sorry. Marcus felt that familiar agitation rise again, scratching furiously against his attempts at reason. Led by what? Fear? He shot back, instantly aware that he was overstepping. The boy's eyes darted between the officers as fear transformed into confusion. "I didn't do anything wrong," he muttered, half pleading, half stating a stark truth, but the words hung heavy in the air, unanswered. "Listen to me," Marcus said, lowering his voice as he turned his attention back to the teenager. "You're all right. You're not going to get hurt here." Weston stepped forward, annoyance tinging his voice. "You really think playing the good cop will save this kid? We can't afford to be soft. If we don't act now." Marcus felt the tension spiral. Perhaps what had once felt like a simple duty to protect had morphed into something more dangerous. Their standards had begun to blind them to humanity, and he could no longer be complicit. "There's a difference between being firm and being ruthless. This isn't the way," Marcus interjected, facing Weston squarely. "He's not a criminal. He's scared." Weston dismissed him with a wave of his hand, frustration and contempt swirling in the air. "You'll regret this, Marcus." The realization hit him hard. Standing for what's right would have repercussions. Marcus unlatched his mind from fear, allowing clarity and conviction to rush forth. "No," he said firmly. "What I regret is standing by while the wrong thing is done. You all wonder why the community doesn't trust us. This is the reason." The other officers shifted uncomfortably. No one had quite challenged Weston publicly like this before. Marcus sensed the weight of possibility, the potential spark of change igniting within him. He could feel a shiver of realization. It was not just about the individual they were confronting, but the collective conscience of the entire police force. The young man's face softened momentarily, then hardened again against the backdrop of authority. Marcus stood unmoving, keeping his voice steady for the boy's sake. The standoff was a critical juncture, not just for himself, but for the culture that had long gone unchallenged. As he readied himself to speak again, the radio crackled ominously, a reminder of their responsibilities, creating a jarring tension in the air. "Unit 5, we have a report of shots fired downtown. All available units respond." Marcus exchanged glances with the young man, whose fear was palpable. The urgency of duty clamored for attention. It promised chaos, unpredictability, but it also represented a chance to reclaim authority with compassion, to demonstrate the change he desperately wanted to foster. "Stay here," Marcus urged the boy, who nodded, still trembling but a flicker of hope glinting through those wary eyes. As he turned away from Weston and the rest of the officers, determination surged through him. The consequences of this moment would either tether him further to the status quo or propel him into uncharted territory, a space where his values could inspire action rather than blind adherence. Marcus felt the urgency of the call, but he also sensed that he was now on the verge of a personal dissent echoing loudly in his heart. He needed to decide. Would he continue to challenge the system that had brought him to the edge, or would he succumb to the fears of a dangerous status quo? With that question hanging heavy in the air, he made his way toward the squad car, heart pounding but resolute, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The time had come to confront both external chaos and internal conflict, and he had never felt so alive. Marcus's thoughts raced as he slid into the driver's seat of the squad car, the radio still buzzing with urgency. The call was about shots fired, and impending chaos, yet Marcus's focus lay less on the chaos ahead and more on the confrontation he'd just endured. The anxiety pulsed through him, but it mingled with a strange exhilaration. Had he really confronted Weston? It felt intoxicating, as though he had shattered an invisible barrier that had confined him. But doubt still loomed. Had he jeopardized his career? As he drove towards downtown, the city lights blurred into streaks, reflecting a broader clash that mirrored his inner turmoil. Who was he truly? Was he merely a cog in this institution, or could he transform it from within? The thoughts collided in his mind, battling passionately for clarity. Pulling up to the chaotic scene, he was met with the sound of sirens and a gathering crowd. People stood in clusters, expressions tight with anxiety and curiosity. The air felt thick with tension, charged with the possibility of violence erupting at any moment. Marcus stepped out of the car, his uniform speaking loudly, a badge of both authority and potential abuse. The chaotic scene twisted in his stomach. He was aware he had to act, but how could he maintain the ideals he had just so fiercely defended? He was staring into a distorted mirror, the uproar of gunfire echoing in the streets, versus the quiet plea for humanity he'd witnessed just a short while ago. "Marcus!" a voice called, breaking through his reverie. It was his partner Riley, her face a mask of urgency. "We need to secure the area and make sure no more shots are fired." He nodded, falling into his familiar role. As he made his way through the throngs of people, his eyes caught snippets of conversations, each more urgent than the last. A group of onlookers pointed toward a nearby alley. "That's where the shots came from," one shouted while another shouted accusations in a trembling voice. "Over here," Riley urged, already moving toward the alley. But as they approached, Marcus's instincts began to work against him. A deeper unease settled in his chest. What if this was another case of misunderstanding? What if they were rushing towards someone who needed protecting? As they crossed into the alley, the shadows deepened. His heart raced again, this time driven by a different kind of anxiety. "We have to be careful," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "Let's not lose sight of protecting everyone involved." Riley glanced at him, perhaps noticing the tremor in his voice. "That's the job, Marcus. We have to get to the bottom of this," she said, marching forward with intent. But in that moment, a decision crystallized in Marcus's mind. He would not blindly follow. This wasn't just about enforcing the law. It was about making a meaningful difference, even if it meant walking a treacherous path. As he stepped into the alley, it dawned on him how thin the line was between justice and aggression. They rounded the corner and chaos erupted once more. An officer had subdued a figure on the ground, a young man trembling beneath the weight of several officers pressing down. The sight slammed against his convictions. "Wait," he shouted. "What are you doing?" The officers froze mid-action, surprised by the authority in his voice. But there was desperation in the boy's eyes that mirrored his own from earlier. "Marcus, stay back," Riley commanded. Confusion inked across her features, but he couldn't back down. This was the moment, the one he'd been building toward all night. Calling to the terrified boy, he felt the weight of his own heart against the tactical notions of his training. "You don't have to be afraid. I'm here to help." The tension in the air thrummed with possibility, a moment that could define everything he stood for. As he faced his fellow officers, he understood. This was not merely about the boy being held down. It was about the very essence of law enforcement and what it meant to wear that badge with honor. "Stop this," he commanded, an unbreakable intent in his voice. Riley's eyes widened, and the world around them froze as the officers turned towards him, expressions a mix of disbelief and challenge. The clash of ideals, the fight for compassion against the backdrop of authority, was unfolding in that narrow alley. He was not just a witness, but an active participant in a pivotal moment. And somewhere deep inside, he knew it was only the beginning. What would become of him if he took this stand? Would the repercussions define him or liberate him? Adjusting his stance, he prepared to confront, not only them, but the very next step of his journey into the unknown. As the tense standoff solidified in the narrow alley, Marcus could feel the scrutiny of his fellow officers burning into him, making the air thicker. They had only seen a partner attempting to protect a suspect, but he knew they were looking at a betrayal of protocol, a challenge to their code. He thought of how easily a badge could become a weapon in the wrong hands and what it meant to wield such power. "Marcus, step aside." One officer barked and the others shifted, ready to reclaim control. He could sense their anger, but he couldn't back down now. He had already stepped too far into the shades of moral ambiguity and found himself standing on his principles, teetering on the edge. "No," he said, firmer this time. "This isn't right." The young man beneath the weight of authority glanced up at Marcus, and for a split second, their eyes locked, an unspoken connection bridging the divide. In that moment, Marcus understood that his choice had already been made. The boy's fear spoke volumes, and Marcus felt a wave of responsibility. Riley's voice faltered, unsure. "Are you really going to challenge them? You could lose your badge, your entire career. Maybe that's what I need," he shot back, the words surprising himself. Until that moment, he had been concerned about the repercussions of his actions. Now, he realized, it might be the very catalyst for the change he always dreamed of achieving. Just as the tension escalated, one officer stepped forward, face tight with anger. "Get back, Marcus, this isn't your decision." "Then who decides the fate of justice? The badge or the humanity behind it?" Marcus challenged, crafting defensively around his conviction. "What you're doing could be destroying a life, not saving one." That opened a crack in their hardened image. Marcus held his ground, deep breaths fueling his resolve as the murmurs of the watching crowd began to echo in the alley. They were turning their attention toward him, eyes wide in anticipation, waiting to see how this confrontation would unfold. The weight of their gaze bore down on him, but it was a different kind of pressure now. It drove him, sharpened his focus. "Look at him," he said, gesturing to the boy. "What if that was your brother, your son? Would you still feel justified?" The silence became palpable, stretching on as the other officers hesitated, uncertainty flickering across their faces. They were used to following orders, but they were not used to questioning them within the confines of their ranks. In that moment, a deeper yearning stirred within Marcus, a calling for transformation that he had long stifled. Would he have the strength to pursue this newfound purpose, risking everything in the process? He felt the creeping weight of doubt resurface again, but it now fueled his determination instead of extinguishing it. Slowly, as if time had slowed down, one officer began to back away, shaking his head. The shift felt monumental, like the first crack in a dam. Marcus seized upon that spark, fixing his attention on the young man. "You're not in trouble. We are here to protect you. Just stay calm." With that reassurance, the adrenaline that coursed through Marcus now ignited a burst of empathy. He was more than just a law enforcer. He was a safeguard, a keeper of dignity in a world fraught with fear. And in that identity lay an unexpected strength, one he had yet to fully appreciate. The young man's face relaxed marginally. Uncertainty remained, but he no longer appeared wholly terrified. "We need to let him go," Marcus said, addressing the others more intensely now. "We owe it to him and to ourselves." It was a gamble, but Marcus could feel the weight of his choice shift. Perhaps he could redefine what it meant to wear the badge, risk it all not for his authority, but for the humanity that underpinned the force of the law. As he stood firm amidst the roaring chaos, the truth resonated deep within him. This was about creating a fracture in the status quo, about taking a stand, not just for the boy, but for all those who felt their silence erased. But would the officers heed that call? Would they support him, or would they retaliate? The silence stretched, the moment hovering between rippling potential and impending consequences, lurking just beyond the edge of resolution. What awaited him now as the cumulative weight of their decisions bore down? Would this ripple into a wave of hope, or a cataclysmic confrontation, reshaping his future in ways he couldn't yet fathom? A sudden break in the oppressive silence interrupted the standoff, As one officer stepped forward, his features taut with outrage. "You know what happens next, Marcus. You're making a mistake," the officer snapped, his voice a mix of anger and disbelief. The intensity of the moment hung heavily, threatening to explode into chaos at any second. Marcus felt the pressure of the situation building around him, but he couldn't back down now. The truth of his stance coursed through him like electricity. Every heartbeat was a reminder that he was ready to confront not only his colleagues, but also the systemic rot festering within the department. He was forced to acknowledge the emptiness that had stirred in his soul for years. Apathy disguised as adherence to procedure. "It's not a mistake if it sets us on the path to real change," he replied, his voice dulling the sharp edge of defiance with a layer of conviction. Each word came from a deeper well of understanding. He wasn't just fighting for the boy anymore. He was wrestling with the very fabric of what it meant to be an officer. The crowd outside the alley, gathering like storm clouds, awaited an outcome that could either shatter or reinforce the institution he had sworn to protect. Glancing at the boy again, Marcus saw a mixture of terror and hope reflected in his wide eyes. That gaze became the determined anchor tethering Marcus to his purpose, steady amidst the rising tide of tension. "Are you really willing to sacrifice everything? This will haunt you," Riley muttered, approaching Marcus with a batch of conflicting emotions coursing through her own demeanor. "You could face disciplinary action, lose your job," she reminded him, anxiety threading her voice. "What kind of job is worth keeping if it means I'm complicit in something wrong?" he challenged, his eyes narrowing in determination. Those words, fervent and raw, filled a void he had long buried. The struggle now was not just for this single encounter, but for something larger. He was nearly ready to expose the very values he had lived by, values that once felt solid and undeniable. As he stood defiant, the grip of protocol began to loosen on the hearts of his fellow officers. One by one, he noticed the hesitation in the way they held their weapons, the way their eyes flickered with uncertainty. The crack he had anticipated had widened, and he could see the sense of agency bubbling beneath their rigid exteriors, the question forming silently in their minds. Was this worth it? "Let him go," Marcus said, his voice steadier than it had ever been before. Somewhere within him, the old fear had transformed into clarity, striking a chord within the others too. He could almost see their walls crumbling, brick by agonizing brick, exposing the raw humanity hidden beneath layers of authority. Then, as if summoned by his last plea, the reluctant officer at the forefront stepped back, weapons lowered, a creeping realization that they were protecting an innocent rather than pursuing a villain. But in that change of heart stirred a troubling thought, the fear of retribution. Would they face punishment for this decision? Would the brotherhood they formed in the ranks prove to be their biggest restraint? Each heartbeat felt charged, not just with adrenaline but with the looming possibility of backlash from superiors who might not understand. Are we really going to let him go? What about orders? Another voice cut through the tension, echoing the fear that now amplified within the group. Orders? Or the moral obligation we took as officers? Marcus countered sharply, the stakes rising higher. The moment shimmered with potential. It could be a turning point not just for him but for every officer struggling under the oppressive veils of tradition. As the reality of this pivotal moment sank in, Marcus faced the dichotomy of consequence. The very badge he'd sworn to uphold could now turn against him. But standing firm, he knew the truth of his identity as a protector outweighed the weight of any title. Caught between courage and fear, Marcus locked eyes with the young man once more, a silent promise exchanged amidst the turmoil. Then, quite unexpectedly, the officer who had first challenged him took a step toward the boy, face softening. "Let's do it, Marcus." Like a domino chain, the crack he created began to ripple, yet a nagging question punctuated his resolve. What other forces were about to come into play? Would it all lead to a resolution, or would it unleash hidden adversities he had yet to confront? Marcus knew that whatever lay ahead would demand more than he had ever envisioned, more than a mere decision in an alley. Would the tide turn in their favor? Or would this mark the beginning of a much darker journey? The atmosphere shifted almost palpably as the officer stepped back, uncertainty fluttering through the ranks like a whisper. Marcus felt the collective tension of his colleagues draw tight, like bowstrings ready to snap. The boy's expression, caught somewhere between relief and astonishment, anchored him further to a purpose he had nearly forgotten. Existed within the confines of uniformity. "Now's the time to act," one of the other officers murmured, hesitatingly lowering his weapon. It was a crack in the wall, and Marcus seized it with urgency. "Together," he urged, catching the eyes of his fellow officers one by one. "This isn't just about him," he pressed on, his voice steady. "It's about us, about rebuilding what it means to wear this badge." As they shifted their grips, Marcus could see the glimmers of hope slowly rising, an acknowledgement that a choice was being made, the fragile balance between duty and morality beginning to tip toward the latter. But as the group began to falter in their dogmas, another officer stepped forward, his face hardened with resolve. "Are you really going to stand there and let this kid go, Marcus? What about the rules?" The challenge stirred something fierce within Marcus, igniting an inner debate ignited not just by the moment, but by the years of watching injustice masquerade as protocol. What are rules worth if they perpetuate harm, if they preserve a system built on lies? The indignation in his tone sharpened, reverberating against the walls of the narrow alley. In those words, he realized, lay the foundation for his transformation. He stood at the brink of becoming a true agent of change, not just for those victimized, but for himself. He could no longer ignore the shadows of complacency that clouded the oath he'd taken. Moral authority isn't given, it's earned. Riley's voice broke through the noise, and he looked at her with gratitude. "Don't you see? What matters now isn't our fear of reprimand, but our ability to do what's right." The pressure built to an almost unbearable level as old loyalties were questioned. Marcus found his chest rising and falling in rhythm with the unfolding internal struggle. Each officer wrestled not simply with the decision at hand, but with who they had allowed themselves to become. He could almost hear the sirens of accountability wailing in the distance. Acceptance of his actions on this day would echo far beyond the limits of that moment. Yet, as it often happens in life, the path to change also stood shrouded in shadows. The potential for punishment hung heavy in the air, gnawing at every officer's resolve. Looking back at the boy, Marcus saw not only terror but newfound courage. Through their collective resolve, he sensed the stirrings of something greater, a formidable camaraderie that could redefine their purpose. It was a chance to reclaim the very identity that had long been tainted by neglect. "Let's do this for him," Marcus rallied. The defiance pulsing through the ranks now felt like a wildfire. Each officer exchanged glances of determination, a decisive fire igniting within them, chipping away at the layers of established silence. Yet amidst the collective resolve, a dark specter loomed near, the specter of those higher up who viewed dissent as treachery. An impending confrontation with those who would seek to silence them lurked just beyond the horizon. The decision made, as the weight of their actions settled in, reality warped around them. Would they be able to withstand the backlash? How would their lives change once they stepped across this threshold together? Marcus recognized that this was not just about one incident. This was a crossroad. As they prepared to make their move, he held on to the refrain echoing in his mind. Not all battles are fought on the streets. Sometimes the hardest wars are those waged within. As the group took a collective breath, the outcome uncertain but necessary, a harsh shout shattered the fragile silence. "You can't just let him go." That voice, commanding and filled with the weight of authority, pushed Marcus into the forefront of an unavoidable storm. Prepare to confront more than just external opposition. This was a moment that demanded clarity in his beliefs. Would he have the courage to face the wrath that awaited? Would the budding change be enough to inspire more than just temporary silence? Marcus stood at the precipice of a decision that would not only define him, but also redefine the entire framework of law enforcement around him. The voice of the disapproving officer echoed in his mind, threatening to shatter the fragile alliance he had so urgently built. In that moment, he felt the weight of scrutiny intensify, eyes narrowing on him as if they were judging not just his actions but the very core of his character. Do we really care more about this boy's safety than our career? An officer question marked the anxious tension in the ranks. He caught the fear trembling behind those words, an unwelcome reflection of the doubt that mirrored in his gut. The fundamental question hung like a heavy fog, threatening to obliterate the clarity that had propelled him forward just seconds earlier. Gritting his teeth, Marcus inhaled deeply, grounding himself against the roiling swirl of emotions. He understood that the urge to conform would provide an easier path, one riddled with less personal upheaval. But as he observed the boy's trembling, wide eyes, he knew he could not retreat into obedience. This young life depended on him, on all of them, to make a stand. "Think of your oaths," he declared, voice firm but tinged with urgency. "Is it to uphold rules that serve injustice, or to protect the innocent? We're not just enforcers. We're supposed to be guardians." Each word felt like a thread, weaving a tapestry of renewed purpose that beckoned them to look beyond their immediate fear toward something much larger. Riley stepped closer, her presence radiating confidence. "We have the power to change this together. Let's be the example, not just for the boy, but for our community." Her gaze moved through the crowd, instilling the flickers of bravery that had begun to spark in their fellow officers. It was contagious, igniting a fire that melded their paths. But as resolve began to stiffen in their backs, the voice of authority roared again, this time accompanied by a heavy-set figure striding purposefully forward, a lieutenant synonymous with relentless adherence to protocol. "Step away from the kid, Marcus. You're making a grave mistake." The words boomed like an executioner's gavel, underlining the stakes. Marcus felt his heart race as he locked eyes with the lieutenant, a man whose unwavering allegiance to rigid hierarchy felt suffocating. The challenge was evident, both a directive and a warning, a potent reminder of his subordinate position. This stand was not merely about action taken, but a crystallization of everything he believed. "And what about the grave mistakes made in silence?" Marcus countered, voice steady, yet shaking with the trembling undercurrent of independent thought blossoming into defiance. The lieutenant faltered momentarily, the question curling like smoke in the air, but then took a step forward, lips firming into a line of authority. "You think this is bravery? You're risking everything." A dangerous inflection accompanied the words, hinting at consequences that lingered like shadows. Watching the confrontation, Marcus felt the reverberations of fear echo among his colleagues. It was as if they were teetering on the edge of an unseen chasm, their choice about to plunge them into a void of accountability. The walls closed in, the atmosphere suffocating with unspoken fears of reprimands, but nestled with a budding camaraderie that began to set roots in the soil of their collective conscience. Each rise and fall of their breath created a pact of solidarity, unspoken but strongly felt. Tension coursed through them. There was an unyielding thread that bound their resolve as they faced both the boy's vulnerability and the impending confrontation rooting heavily in their next steps. "Then let's face whatever comes," Marcus breathed, heart pounding fiercely against his ribcage, determination surging through him. "Not just for him, but for all of us. It's time we discover what we truly stand for." With the stakes higher than ever, Marcus recognized that the internal battle for his convictions had escalated into an external war of moral integrity. What remained now was the anticipation of the fight yet to unfold. As Marcus stood firm, the realization crept in. He was prepared for anything that lay ahead. It was a turning point for them all, but what lay on the other side was still shrouded in uncertainty, ripe for revelation. As he turned to face the lieutenant again, a clandestine determination gleamed in his eyes. The challenge was set, but a higher stake lay in what discovery awaited them all. Would this act of courage reshape not just their understanding of duty, but the very fabric of their lives? Marcus found himself standing at a crossroads, the weight of the moment pressing down on him with an intensity he had never known. With each beat of his heart, he felt the fervor of impending change building like static electricity in the air, ready to explode into something magnificent or devastating. As the lieutenant's words echoed threateningly, Marcus took a step forward, filled with an unshakable sense of conviction. "This is about more than just one boy or one incident. It's about the very soul of our department and the meaning of justice in our community." The other officers shifted, uncertainty mingling with determination. Marcus had seen the flicker of courage within them. Now, he clung to the hope that their collective bravery could ignite into a flame of transformation. They were not merely enforcers of the law. They held the power to be protectors, guardians who could redefine the narrative for their community. "Stand with me, not against me," Marcus implored, his voice steady, echoing through the alleyway like a beacon. "We have a choice to take a stand, to elevate compassion above compliance." Slowly, he noticed heads nodding, an unspoken affirmation of his call to arms. Riley moved closer, her shoulders squared and voice steady. "We can't let fear stifle what is right. We owe that to ourselves and the communities we serve." As the lieutenant narrowed his eyes in visible contempt, Marcus felt a surge of solidarity from within the ranks. "You think this is insubordination? It's a duty to uphold justice, even when it means challenging your orders." Marcus pushed forward, glancing at the young man still trembling on the ground. "It's time to take a stand for something meaningful." "Meaningful?" the lieutenant spat, unable to mask his disdain. "Your thoughts are naive, Marcus. You'll regret this." "Maybe I will," Marcus replied, still holding firm. "But I'd rather live with regret than stand by silent when the truth needs to be heard. Because every day we ignore the bias within our ranks, we betray the trust of those we serve." In that moment, Marcus felt the air shift. The balance of power seemed to teeter ever so slightly in his favor. The time for reckoning had come, and the choices made now would pave the way for an unprecedented transformation, not just personally, but for everyone present. Courage flooded his heart as he straightened his posture defiantly, eyes blazing with purpose. The pressure hung heavy as one officer, previously lost in uncertainty, slowly lowered his weapon, a signal that emboldened others standing nearby. One by one, they began to echo Marcus's sentiments. "We stand with you," someone from the group asserted quietly. Yet the words resonated like a victory bell, awakening a sense of shared identity. The lieutenant's face was taut with disbelief as he realized he was losing control over them. The authority he had wielded seemed to be unraveling in front of his eyes. "This isn't finished," he warned, voice a mixture of frustration and impending defeat. Marcus's heart raced with a mix of exhilaration and apprehension. He understood that their confrontation was not just a battle for this moment, but a harbinger of the complex journey ahead, one that could lead to professional repercussions or even isolation within the department. Yet finally he felt a sense of certainty building within him. It was time to advocate for a new standard, one forged in integrity and humanity. As disagreement morphed into a collective resolve amongst his peers, Marcus turned back to the frightened boy, his compassion reignited in this pivotal instance of support. "You're safe now," he assured, raising a hand toward him. "We're going to protect you." With those words, the atmosphere began to shift from tension to a model of newfound solidarity. The realization that they were not just a band of officers but a community of guardians fought to the surface, solidifying their collective identity. As they stood together, the fear of individuals slowly transformed into an energetic pulse of unity. Each officer began to recognize their power, not just as enforcers of the law, but champions of justice. "Let's open the door for dialogue moving forward. Let this be the moment we redefine what it means to be law enforcement in our community," Marcus declared. The feeling of fulfillment surged within him. He had transformed his inner turmoil into clarity, leading a movement steeped in integrity. The presence of courageous men and women standing behind him felt electric as they prepared to forge a new path. The standing formality had melted away, replaced by a sense of empowerment, a commitment to eternal vigilance in the face of prejudice. What lay ahead now promised to be challenging and complex, but finally, Marcus felt a profound sense of belonging in this mission. It was his moment of self-actualization, breaking free from the constraints of silence. With every conviction brewing around him, he found his confidence solidified. He was no longer just a deputy learning to navigate a corrupt system. He was a catalyst for change, a beacon of hope within a community reshaping its future. For the first time, He embraced the possibility that this road would demand more from him than he could anticipate. But what lay ahead would not deter him. It would embolden him, affirming the desire to face injustice head-on, leading by example for the generations that followed. Marcus Collins, no longer just a mechanic, no longer just a deputy, stood as a harbinger of change, ready to face whatever challenges awaited. And what awaited them all was an unwavering commitment to reclaim honor, dignity, and justice. Now is the moment to take action. You need to subscribe immediately to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that could change lives. Be part of this journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread this vital message far and wide. It's time to take your thoughts to the comments, so share your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. And remember, if you care about positivity and transformation, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this profound conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to support change.